Will the NHL return by January the 1st? How many games will they play? What will the format be? Will there be an All Canadian Division? We'll discuss all the speculation about the NHL's return coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, there's a lot of talk and a lot of speculation. The NHL is really close to making an announcement and hammering out a plan for a January the 1st, 2021 return to play for their 2021 NHL season for obviously what would have been the 2021 season, which likely is just going to be called the 21 season here once we get underway, since it's going to be into the new year. So obviously right now, as I record this, it is Wednesday, November the 11th. Tomorrow, Thursday, November 12th, there is a meeting between Gary Bettman, Bill Daly, and the NHL owners, where Bettman and Daly are hoping to be presenting a plan to the owners that they've agreed upon with the players for a return-to-play scenario. Now, of course, they've been negotiating a lot with the NHLPA. We don't obviously have a whole lot of anything confirmed at this point, a lot of speculation out there. So I want to talk about what's being reported, a little bit of my own thoughts, and what is likely going to come about. Now, a couple things that we do know. We know that the NHL does not want to have the season go too long into the summer because of the NHL's return. When it was here to complete the 1920 season, the NHL ratings were actually not all that fantastic, and a lot of that was just because of the time of year was in the summer. The hardcore fans tuned in like we knew they would, like I did. I'm sure like many of you watching this did, but a lot of the casual fans, the ones that were not as involved, and I'm sure to a degree some of the teams that didn't make it to the return and play, their fan bases to some extent probably were not tuning in as well because their favorite teams and players were not in the mix here. So clearly the ratings were not what they were hoping for, even though they did have a very successful return to play tournament. They got through it without any COVID positive testing, which was fantastic. Everybody was safe and secure, and everything worked out rather well. But I think for the NHL, for the upcoming year, obviously they're hoping to get fans in attendance. They're hoping for a lot of things, but right now they need to figure out something they can start with, and it may not be the exact same way that we finish. Now, if we take a look at the calendar and we target a January the 1st start date, Gary Bettman had indicated that they're hoping to have their regular season wrapped up by the end of April, probably no more than early May. So if we're looking at, from a calendar perspective, that's just over 4 months. There's absolutely no way you can cram 82 games into that season without totally exhausting the players and putting them at high risk to injury, and I don't see anybody agreeing to that. Now, I think the logical step here, if you take a look at it, the essential way of doing this is we're likely going to have to go with a reduced schedule. Now, we've already seen the NBA announce their plans. They're starting around December the 22nd, and I believe it was 72 games, correct me if I'm wrong on that they're going to play. So they're going to play a shortened season, and to be honest, I think the NHL season is going to be even a little bit less than the NBA's. Now, if you take a look here, we're probably going to see some NHL realignment for regional play, at least to start the season, and we could even see a number of hubs here pop up as well. So how this would work is the NHL is likely going to be announcing that they're going to be realigning the divisions on a temporary basis. I expect them to go back to the old format as early as the season after, when hopefully everything can kind of go back to what we used to call normal here, normal times where you can travel and have normal play, fans in attendance, and all that kind of stuff. So right now we're going to see 4 regionally based divisions, with one of them likely being a northern or all Canadian division. So here's how this is going to work, and a lot of this has to do with the fact of the U.S.-Canadian border closure. You can't have teams traveling back and forth and having to quarantine all the time because they'd never be able to play enough games. It just would not work. It would slow things down way too drastically here. So obviously there's 7 Canadian teams, so let's start with that. The Canadian division obviously would comprise the Montreal Canadiens, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Ottawa Senators, the Winnipeg Jets, the Vancouver Canucks, Calgary Flames, and Edmonton Oilers. So those 7 teams would start off in a division, and they would only play each other for at least the start of the season for a little while until we get further along here. Now, of course, the other divisions would be as follows. You'd see another Eastern-based division here, with it basically is all the most Eastern United States teams, comprising of all the teams in the New York State, like the New York Islanders, the New York Rangers, the Buffalo Sabres, Of course, you have nearby the New Jersey Devils. You also are going to have some other teams that are close by, including the Pens and the Flyers, as well as the Capitals and the Bruins. So, I mean, that gives you a pretty solid division there, an Eastern-based division. And then you're going to have basically a Central or Central/Southern division is what I'm calling it for right now. They'll probably refer to it as a Southern division from my understanding, which will include the St. Louis Blues, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Detroit Red Wings, Chicago Blackhawks, Tampa Bay Lightning, Florida Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, and the Nashville Predators. So a lot of those teams are somewhat south. Some are more south than others, and for the most part, they're all somewhat central to the United States as well. Anywhere from Detroit, which is pretty north, all the way down to Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning, which are pretty south. So obviously, a little bit of a wider range of geographic area there, but obviously an essential part here to get them kind of lined up the best they can. Now, of course, the fourth and final division will be your Western Division as well. The Western Division will be comprised of the Avalanche, the Stars, the Minnesota Wild, the Arizona Coyotes, LA Kings, Anaheim Ducks, and San Jose Sharks, all out of California, and of course, the Vegas Golden Knights. Things would start with those teams only playing the teams in their division. Now, if you look at the calendar, if they're intending to start January 1st, which is what the first games we played, so you'd have training camps opening up as early as middle of December for most of the league. With the 7 teams that did not compete in the return to play, they are supposed to be getting an extra week to 10 days of training camp time since they have gone an extra extended period of time without being able to compete here and play any meaningful games. So they could be starting even earlier into December, which is why this is so important that the NHL needs to get something hammered out and relatively quick, because a lot of these teams are going to have players coming back to their NHL cities, traveling between Canada, between the United States, coming over from Europe, Russia, etc. And a lot of different places still have quarantining rules in effect. Especially, I know in Canada here we do. I'm not sure about a lot of the U.S. regional teams, how they're impacted that way. But still, a lot of players are going to have to travel and quarantine to be there on time. They're going to have to start making plans here in short order to get to their NHL cities if they can make an announcement here over the next couple of days. So clearly that's important for that reason. We'd have regional play, like I said, and then over time, if things were to improve, we would possibly see play within other divisions, depending on how things go. Now, they could also do this in one of two ways when it comes to where are the games going to be played. How are the formats going to be? Are there going to be hub cities? How is that all going to work? Now, you could see a case of each division having a hub and the teams all kind of traveling in, being based at these hub cities for about a 2-week time span, playing a bunch of games. Now, they may not all be there at the same time, obviously, because you have to rotate them through so that they can all have different time to play and time off. They'd have approximately 10 to 14 days where they'd be in the hub, play a bunch of games, probably upwards of 4 games a week, would be my understanding. Maybe a 5th game, I guess, but where there's no travel involved. They might be able to go a little bit more. I'm not sure how much they want to push that. But either way, you're looking at 4 to 5 games a week. And then from there, they would go home for a week. And then obviously they wouldn't be as safe as they were in a completely airtight bubble. But they obviously would be expected to be very careful. They'd have to be tested a lot and all that kind of stuff to keep things safe and secure here. And then they would kind of rotate through in that direction. So you'd probably at any given time you'd have you'd probably have maybe 5 teams in that little hub, and then 1 or 2 kind of taking turns rotating through so that they're all kind of getting their week break to go see their families and whatnot. And that could probably be how we start. Now, they'll likely start with that if they don't feel like there's enough NHL buildings where they can really get any fans in attendance, because if they're not really going to be able to have hardly any fans and hardly any arenas, it's not really going to make sense to allow a few teams here and there to do that now. Or maybe if there are a few that will allow a little bit, maybe those are the places where the hubs will be located. It's difficult to say exactly, but that's likely how it's going to start, is there'll be a hub in each NHL division. So 4 hubs, like I said, rotating in and out, play a bunch of games, go home, and kind of go that way. Now, as time goes on here, if things are improving with the caseloads or with the COVID, and of course if a vaccine becomes available, which is expected to sometime early in the new year, it could be well into the spring now before it's widely available to the general public at least. Difficult to say how much of an impact it's going to have on the season, but at the very least, by the time that their season is getting close to being done, they're hoping to have at least 25 to 30% fans in attendance. And at that point, maybe you could have, like I said, maybe they'll say, okay, well, maybe the Canadian Division can play with the Eastern Division and have some interdivisional games, travel back and forth with minimal fans in attendance. The same could be said for the other two, like the Southern and Western Divisions. Perhaps they could do that, the same thing. But then the hopes would be by the time we hit the NHL playoffs that we could have normal travel, and we'd also have maybe not normal full gate arenas here, but or at least a much bigger percentage of the seats full in the arenas for the playoffs. At least that would be the hope and the expectation, so they could actually recoup as much money here as they can. Because at the end of the day, this is a business and they need to survive and make money just like everybody else. So clearly that's kind of the plan that we're going with. And the plan would be to have the Stanley Cup awarded. The season would obviously run a little bit longer than usual, but not too badly. So that like I said, we're into July before the Stanley Cup is awarded. The goal probably would be to be done before the Summer Olympics start, which is, I think, tentatively July the 23rd in Tokyo. So obviously for broadcasting purposes, that might have to be part of the plan, depending on their broadcast partners and agreements in that respect. So that could play a factor in there as well. And then at the same time, they want to really make sure that they can get back to their old hockey calendar for next season. So for 21-22, they have the Seattle Kraken coming into play. They need to hold an expansion draft. They have a lot of really important business to take care of before that season gets underway, and they really don't want anything to disrupt it. Of course, that extra cash flow coming in from the expansion money will be a big help to many of the NHL teams as well to help keep them afloat. And obviously, it wasn't intended to make up for lost revenue in the beginning, but it's going to play a big role in that here now. So I think more than likely we're going to see an NHL schedule of anywhere from 48 to 56 games. I think 56 to me makes the most sense. I mean, you never know. Maybe we get a little bit more than that. Maybe it goes to 62. Probably 62, the absolute max, but I think that's probably pushing it. I think more likely 48 to 56 games is probably what we're going to see with the regular playoffs and hopefully regular fans in attendance, or at least a big enough percentage of fans in attendance that it's worthwhile to the owners to obviously recoup some money and kind of go from there and get back on track. If the season doesn't end until the 3rd or 4th week of July, then you're probably looking at having, during the month of August, you're going to have an NHL draft and free agency period. And obviously during the draft, you're going to have, the expansion draft too, all pretty kind of close together. That's a lot of stuff to go there. And obviously the month of September, would be kind of quiet until we get towards the later part of it. Then you'd have training camps open, and then you'd have the new season starting in October like we are used to, and hopefully be back to normal. So to me, I guess we'll find out. We'll know a lot more possibly as early as tomorrow evening, later today. The conference call between Bettman, Daly, and the Board of Governors is expected to happen, I think, around 3:30 Eastern time, I believe it is. So I don't know if we'll get an announcement tomorrow night. We may not get an announcement at all, because it really boils down to what is kind of all agreed upon. It could still be a little bit, but right now they're really feeling the pressure when it comes to time. There's not a ton of time left to get a January 1st start date in place. There was also talk as well, and we'll see if there's anything to it, that the week between Christmas and New Year's, that there very well could be some NHL exhibition games at that point. And even if it's mostly the 7 teams possibly that did not make it to the return to play, they're expected to get maybe even an extra 1 or 2 exhibition games, as well as an extra week to 10 days of training camp. So it really may not be all that long before we get more real things happening here in the hockey world here. Once again, this offseason could be short and abbreviated here. After all, of course, we're going to have the World Junior Championships starting on Christmas Day as well. So there should be plenty to talk about here in the near future. Many NHL arenas have already got their ice in. They're ready to roll. There's expected to, a lot of them are expected to open up here soon as well, if they're not already, for players that are already in the area, if they want to go in and train and do informal stuff ahead of training camp as well. So let me know your thoughts on the NHL's return, what this 2021 NHL season could look like, and I guess we'll find out here soon enough. Hopefully the NHL has an announcement for us in a day or so's time, like we're expecting. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.